Are we in? We're underway. Season 3, episode 2. Oh,
Oh,
no. Season 3, episode 3. I was looking for
episode
the wrong
three.
paper.
Yep.
Your
So,
volume's low today, buddy.
it just might be because I think the mic. I realized my mic is really far. Is that better? I brought it
Keep
closer.
keep talking.
Okay. So I could check my volume, but I'm even hesitant. I know you're hesitant to touch the.
It's not bad. It's not bad now. It's better.
It's better.
Can you
Okay.
hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is awesome that we've been podcasting for years and we still have trouble. Like I mean, if anything, I think we've just gotten better at troubleshooting because the
Mm-hmm.
tech just doesn't seem to cooperate sometimes.
No, it doesn't. And for me, I d- I don't claim to have any depth of understanding of what is going on inside of like my whole kit's running off of I think circa 2012 MacBook Pro. It's one of there. It's somewhere in that zone, right? And
Yeah.
it's lived a good life. Like I've gone through. It's on its third battery.
Whoa.
I'm at least on my third or fourth power cord, the MagSafe power cord. As I'm looking over, I can see one of the dongles that is connected to the monitor. So I think it goes from I don't know what it's called, a micro display, something like that. So that's what comes out of the MacBook, and then it goes to a VGA
Hmm.
adapter. The cord on it is kind of yellow. Now the actual dongle's white, so I know when you see a yellow cord, that's heat. That's a heat issue. So it's overheating. And then you sometimes the cord gets kind of like stiff and then crispy. So that one's on the way out. And you know what? Just all the stuff I have plugged into it, I'm sure I'm pushing its computing limits. It's fascinating to me because I think that Skype I mean, still getting to know this app seems like a decent app. You know, we like the sounds and the emoticons that we can emoji things that we can
Hmm.
throw up. It makes me wonder how heavy or dense of an app it is because it really lags my computer. Like there's nothing else. It's using up all my RAM to sort of do this streaming conversation with you. And even sometimes, does yours freeze up at all on your end?
It did the other day. The last time we did this, it did
Mm-hmm.
freeze up, and I was like, "What's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
But that was it. That was the only issue I've ever really had.
It when we first started chatting in the on ramp, it froze up a bit, and that could be processing power on my computer, but also think sometimes it's the app. Like the app is just, excuse me, it's
Bless you.
demanding. Thank you. It's demanding. I know, and I've noticed this with other things as well. Like my previous iPhone.
Hmm.
Um, so I went from an iPhone 6 to an 8 Plus. So the 6 that I had, if I was running Waze in the car
Hmm.
and I had it plugged in, so it basically had a steady feed of electricity, my phone wouldn't charge. It actually wouldn't charge if I had that app running while I was running it in the car. So that makes me think like the amount of power that's necessary. Like it should charge at the same time, right? Like if you're running apps and you have it plugged, like you should be getting some. Like if I run podcast, well, if I were listen when I listen to podcasts in the car, I would have it plugged in. Podcast app is playing. It's stuff that's on my phone, so it's not streaming it. I'll mind you, it's not streaming data. But there's something about the Waze app. Do you use Waze
No,
ever? I think it runs heavy. Like I think it's a really heavy app. It power and resources that it demands.
I just use
Um.
my Garmin,
Oh yeah. Oh, like just
like
like a
just the one that is bought aftermarket,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I just plug it in and let it do its thing.
Yeah, there's something to that, eh? Like those devices that aren't necessarily using 3G or 4G or 5G network in order to gather their information. And it's plugged right into the adapter, I'm sure, like right into the.
That's it.
Is it okay? So is it plugged in? Do cars still come with ashtrays?
Ashtrays, no, but they do have like I don't know what the plug-in is called for those things, but I have two of those things in my car. So the Garmin gets plugged right into
I know
So
we don't want to call it
I
the
don't even.
cigarette lighter, but is it still the same shape?
Yes, it's the exact
Right.
same. It looks the
But
same.
it's a
So
certain voltage, 2.4, something, 1 point, something like that. Yeah.
into the cigarette lighter, and then I've got a second cigarette lighter, and then I bought an adapter for my car phone. So we can charge devices in the car, but my new car has a USB port.
Mm.
So I guess I could plug directly into there and charge my devices. But um, yeah, it's a cigarette lighter. That's what it is. Those things were awesome, bro. I I loved those things when I was a kid. And my dad smoked. So
Mm.
I'd be sitting in the back and he'd pull out a cigarette. I'm like, "Can I push it in?" He's like, "Sure." And I remember, which this would never happen today, I would basically get up from the back seat, crawl between the two front seats to push it in.
Mm.
Remember, you have to push it in,
Oh,
and
yeah.
after what, 30 seconds, 25 seconds, it would pop out,
Pop.
meaning it
Yeah.
was ready and heated. And he'd pull it out and, light up his dart, as I like to call them, and then put it back in. Good times, good times.
The that's a good example actually of what I'm talking about, the running heavy. The idea that these apps they're demanding because you imagine the power that it's taken to heat up those coils.
Oh, yeah.
And I can remember on two occasions my dad burning his own nose. So he's got the smoke in his mouth. He's got the smoke in his mouth and he's got the lighter. I wish I had something so he's got the lighter and he goes to do it and he hits the thing and he clipped his own nose, dude. No joke. Yeah, got him on the side one time and right on the end. And as it's healing, he's got like these concentric circles on the tip of his nose. The dude did not have luck with his nose. Like just in life, did not have luck with his nose.
Well, can I tell
Const-
you another funny thing?
yeah, yeah.
My dad would have his cigarette, right? And he'd be driving, and every now and again he'd be distracted, and his cigarette would just kind of come over and touch the top of the dash.
Mm,
So he had holes
yeah.
like he'd turn and it touched the dash and instantly, I don't know what they were making dashboards out of, but instantly melt the plastic. And I
Yep.
remember, oh man, I was very respectful of my dad to his face, just because, like the whole upbringing of you're here and you behave when you're with me type of thing. But I remember we went to North Bay to visit Nipissing University before I went to teachers college. So I'm what I'm like 21 years old, and we took my car, which is funny because he bought me a car when I graduated from high school. So really, it was his car, but I got to drive it all the time. We took my car to North Bay. I drove up, and then when it was time, and we slept over, but when it was time for me to go on my school tour, my dad's like, "Well, I'm not going to come on the tour. I'm just going to go for a drive or something." I'm like, "Okay, we'll see in a bit." And I took care of my car. Like it was pristine, and I didn't smoke. So I didn't have like cigarette stuff everywhere. The tour ends. I walk out of the building. I see him in the parking lot. I go over, and he's sitting there. He's doing his thing. And I get in the car, and he goes, "Okay, you drive. You drive. We're going to go home now." I'm like, "Yeah, we're going home, Dad." Gets in the passenger side. I sit in the driver's seat. And right at like 2 o'clock on the dash, there's a burn hole. I'm like, "Dad, what did you do?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's just like smoking away, freaking smoke everywhere. "Dad, your cigarette burned a hole in the dashboard." He's like, "What's the problem?" He gave me the look of, "Hey, I bought this car. So if I want to trash it," I'm like, "Dad, I've spent years taking care of the car. I don't smoke. I don't do da 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 da. I leave you to drive the car for like an hour and you burn the dash." So
It's
needless,
go
sorry,
go.
go ahead.
No, no, you wrap it. You wrap it.
Needless to say, I was not impressed. But then I looked at him and I was like, well, 20, whether I'm 21 or 14, he's my dad and I'm not about to take a strip off of him. So there goes my dash. But
It
anyway,
makes yeah. No, you just it also or you could be the dad or you could be the son because I mean I've already had those conversations with the kids where you're just like I left the room for 10 seconds. I left the room for 10 seconds and how has this happened? Everything that I see in front of me and you just have sort of innocence and slight sort of like malevolence looking back at you like, we're not going to tell you. We're not going to tell you how this happened because if we tell you how, like, we would rather just deal with what you're seeing as a problem right now, whether it's a mess or something got broken or someone's crying, we would rather deal just with that layer because we don't want to reveal our secrets. We're not going to tell you how we actually got into this predicament. So it's funny.
That's cool that
Dads.
we talked a little bit about our dads.
Yeah.
It's nice. Yeah,
My,
it's
my my dad was a big smoker too. My
oh
dad was
my dad was smoking like 24/7. And I'd love to hear your perspective on, because I believe your father was still around when you're married, and
yep,
did you have you had a kid, and when your
yep.
dad was okay. So
Both.
my dad
Both. He was
both
still,
okay.
yeah, he was here for both.
My dad wasn't. So um and my dad wasn't even around for like when I got married and stuff. But I remember in my teenage years, later teenage years, my sister would refuse to sit in the same room as my dad when he would smoke. So my dad would come into the family room where we'd be sitting watching TV, and he'd pull out a cigarette and light it up, and she'd get up and leave. And he's like, "What's her problem?" I'm like, nobody wants to be around when you smoke." Like it was interesting, eh? Because he saw it as, oh, get over yourselves, right? Like, give me a break kind of thing. Where we were like, hey, we know what this stuff does now to people, and you've been puffing since we were born. Like, we've been exposed to this day. I'm 100% surprised, actually, to be honest with you, very surprised that my lungs are okay and that, like, I have no breathing problems. Because in my mind, I can't fathom how I could have been exposed to the garbage in that stuff all my life, basically. And, like, knock on wood, like I when I run or when I do something like intense physical activity, I don't have breathing issues. I've never had breathing issues. So I consider myself quite fortunate. Um, and like in his later years, we none of us were smokers. So we'd say to him like, "This is crazy, man. Like you've been doing this all your life, fine, but you've exposed us all your life, and now we know what it does, and you're still walking in here doing it." So it was an interesting situation because we didn't want to tell our dad what to do, but at the same time we're like, holy cow, like you smoke, but do it somewhere else. So I remember that. I remember my sister the first time she got up and she's like, I'm out of here. I'm not gonna sit there while he does this. Like, and the room would fill with like it was. We had this beautiful Japanese art on the wall that my mom bought, and it was made out of like ivory, and there were different colors. Everything that was white in the one plateau was now nicotine colored. It had absorbed the like the brownish yellowish smoke. Well, like friggin' art is ruined, and you're still huffing and puffing. So anyway, I don't know what your feelings are or how you reacted. Like, would your dad just walk into your place, sit down, and light up a dart, and you and Karen would be like, "Hey, he's just smoking in front of us. No biggie."
No, it was, and you had me first. You had me thinking about where where my because my mom smoked too, and even while I was so the flow was like my mom and dad both smoked. I can remember them smoking at my grandparents' place. My dad didn't smoke in his mom's house, but I think he did smoke in my mom's house because both my mom's mom and dad smoked, and several of the I think at least one of her brothers smoked too. So I think they were smoking in the house when I was young. So like I have memories of when, mostly something like Christmas where it was a massive gathering and they'd be playing cards after dinner and everyone's smoking in the kitchen because I was like it was a big kitchen where they would hang out. But yeah, had me think like I'm trying to remember the spaces. I think it was just on the main floor, and I think it was mostly so I'm thinking about my parents' house and just in the kitchen. Um, I don't think our basement was always finished. It was finished when we moved in. I don't think they ever smoked in the basement. I don't remember it, and I don't remember the smell of it in the basement. Not sure if they smoked upstairs, but definitely on the main floor there was always an ashtray in some state of sort of washedness on the countertop, mostly just rinsed out. Um, and it's and of course my dad smoked in the car. Both my parents smoked in the car. Um, and I, as far as that kind of shifting perspective, like your kids pushing you to be a better person. My sister didn't do it because she smoked for a while. I started smoking when it was after I finished university, and I did I grabbed a Greyhound bus pass, and I was zipping back and forth across Canada, just staying in youth hostels. And friends that I would meet, new people that I would meet, I realized that there'd always be a crew standing somewhere huddled around, different people from all over the world standing around just having a conversation and all sharing a cigarette. And to me, it looked like that was a gateway to meeting new people. So it was a social gateway that led me to starting to smoke because you'd walk up to this crew and the starting gesture was not only like, hey, my name is Chris, it was also, can I you're sort of doing the two finger, like, can I bum a smoke off you? And I started smoking while I was traveling across Canada. And what I did is I was actually because at that it was funny. So that's like 1995 or six. We at the time I think the pricing was really changing. And I have to go back and look at this, but I think the pricing of cigarettes got kind of crazy in that time, like where we sort of went from a fairly cheap pack, taxes and everything. I think like there were some places where packs were going for $10 a pack. And at the time that was a pretty expensive. I don't know what a pack goes for now, but a pack of cigarettes was like $10 a pack, if I'm remembering correctly, to the point where some of the travelers that I ran into, they were saying, "Oh yeah, if you happen to cruise back through this province, make sure you're loading up on cigarettes because like you want to buy your carton of smokes there." I'm just like, I don't want to do any of that. So I started carrying papers and rolling drum. I was rolling my own cigarettes. So I had a little pouch of tobacco and the rolling papers, and I even had like a Zippo lighter. Like I had my kit for smoke. So someone would, and it was funny because here's the other thing that I found is that not everybody knew how to roll a cigarette very well that I was running into. They just wanted the quick, like it's already in the, it's like they wanted the Tassimo version of smoking. Like they didn't want to have to worry about making the coffee. They just wanted to press the button and get their coffee out, right? So I often didn't have to share my tobacco with anybody because I'd like hold out the bag of drum and then, inside, you may or may not know, but so I just keep the papers inside the actual bag of drum. So you open it up and they're sort of looking at it. They're like, what the hell's this? I'm like, well, if you want one. And I wouldn't roll for anybody. I'm like, no, you can roll one yourself if you want, but I'm not going to do the work for you. I wasn't a kind, I wasn't a kind share of my smokes. But so basically, yeah, I started smoking and I smoked, I'd say consistently for about 7 years. When I came back to Ontario, I was buying packs of cigarettes, but it was on my last official pack that I bought was about a week before. I don't want to lie about this. The last official pack that I bought, I believe, was the week before I got married, so 2002. And then the only other cigarette that I had, and I actually had three, was when I was negotiating my first mortgage. But back to where you started with this. This is a big share about me and my smoker's past. My dad, my mom was always the one talking about. Sorry, my mom was always the one. She was a smoker, but would kind of obscure the amount that she smoked. Like she would sort of say she was smoking less than she was. My dad was the one that was always kind of breaking down, trying to quit. Like I can remember him one time we had it was some, the memory's kind of fogged, but it was sort of some after dinner meeting and my dad crying at the table saying that he can't do it. He's trying so hard, but he can't quit smoking. It had that much of a hold on him. So,
Dude, it's funny that you say that because my dad had the hold on him. Like, so I never smoked. I never smoked because I would see my dad doing it, and it's just something that just didn't appeal to me. Um, so my dad he had a major heart attack. He had to have
mm,
heart surgery, and then they told him, well, you can't be doing this anymore. And then he quit for like a year, and then something happened. Somebody got him back into it. This is the story. And I remember the one day, so heart attack, stop smoking, start smoking again. And we said to my dad, like my brother, sister, and myself, we said, like, this is ridiculous. Like, look at this. Like you got heart problems, you're not healthy, da 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 da. You know what he said to us? And I respected my father for this. I don't know what my sister and my brother think, but he said, this is all I got. Like
mm,
this brings me joy, and I know it's killing me, but I'm not stopping. And I was like, you know what? I think my sister was bothered. My brother didn't say anything. I think my sister was really angry, but I was like, you know what? Like step back and look at our dad for a minute. Like all he ever did was work. I think I've referred to maybe on air, off air, I don't know. He used to, he wouldn't come home unless he had the money to pay the bills type of thing. My dad didn't do anything. Like I never saw him hang out with friends. I never saw him. He just worked. And so this was his own, this was his thing. He enjoyed it. It made him feel good, and he was not going to stop. It's all he had left. And so I was like, okay, well, I mean, I just felt like I'm not going to argue with you about that. If this is all you got and you know it's killing you and you know how we feel about it and you're not going to stop, go nuts, I guess. I all I know is it never appealed to me. Now, what you said about what a great gateway into meeting new people and stuff, I have to tell you that of I do remember feeling jealous of like being in high school and seeing a really attractive girl in the smoking section and knowing I was never going to meet her because I wasn't going over there. I was one of those guys, I'm not going to the smoking section. And I'd see people go over there and like you said, they just light up with and start a conversation. Now, the funny thing about that is in this day, it makes me feel like what I should do is buy a box of Timbits. And the next time I go to the rink, one of the ways I can meet some of the new parents is to just walk up, say, hey, you want a Timbit? Let's chat. I'm Roland. Which one's your kid? Like let's turn this thing, let's flip it up on over and put it on its head and be like, find new ways of introducing yourself to people using new drugs like Timbits or, I don't know, coffee or something. I don't know. But I do remember that. I do remember people would meet each other. Like I'd say, how do you know that person? I met them in the smoking section the other day. What? You smoke? No. Well, I thought I'd go over and say hello, and then they offered me a cigarette, so I smoked it. I'm like, oh my God. Like, those stories break my heart. I'm like, you don't smoke, but you went over to meet the person, so you started smoking? Yeah. Oh, okay. Like, what do you say when you hear something like that?
I I don't know, and I don't know how I don't okay. So I don't think I had any feels around. I didn't have any feels around either one of what my parents were doing as it being problematic. I don't think I did until I saw my dad cry, and he sort of admitted that there was a whole other side to this, that like the compulsion and the struggle. I had no, it didn't become something, wasn't brought to my attention as out of the ordinary until he did that. He sort of made that moment happen. And it's funny because that was the thing that set in motion probably my what becomes almost like an inquiry, right? Like you sort of do this strange inquiry and you go like, what is it about the smoking? So we're talking that conversation probably happened back in the 80s. And I don't have, I could probably Google it, but I'm sure you could find the wave where the wave first started around um, smoking being socially accepted, like when that started to really dry on the vine, like it just started to wither. And then, from there you had the introduction of, you know, well, there was a whole bunch of stuff that came out of that, right? Like we were sort of, you and I are part of the generation of observing that sort of social and health change. I remember going to restaurants and finding it like the person would say, smoking, you want smoking or not? I remember that. I remember movie theaters where there was this is sort of pre-Cineplex. So this is before Cineplex Odeon took a stranglehold on the market, and we had independent theaters in Oshawa. There was the Highland, there was the Regent, and there was the Marks. So there were three movie theaters, as well as there was one in the mall, which was Famous Players. So the one that was in the mall was called Famous Players, but then you had these three independents, and the Regent and the Marks, which were kind of like they were movie houses, but they looked like old school theaters, right? Like with the really nice sort of like red curtains and sort of like the scone lights across the front. Like it looked like something that back in the day was where, part of a saloon kind of thing, but now they showed movies. And both of them had balconies. And that's where you would go, like there was an upper level and you would smoke up there. So you're in the movie theater and you could smell the smoke. The restaurants. Um, I remember I remember it in it was grade two. It had to have been grade two. And I'm in a classroom. I go into the classroom and I can smell smoke. I go into the classroom, I can smell smoke. And I look up at the front desk where the teacher is, and I swear I swear I can see like the remnants of smoke. The teacher's sitting at the desk. And I can see the class comes in and I can still smell smoke in the class. So this is part of the, I guess, the training. Like, the smell of it, you yourself, if it's in your home, it, if your parents did it, like it's such a quick, it's not like, it's not like campfire. It's not like toast. Cigarette smoke in a room is a very specific trigger. And I don't think it's necessary. It might be different cigarette to cigarette, maybe, but I think cigarette smoke is very specific. And for me. And the principal comes to the door. So I'm sitting kind of in the middle of the class. So I'm sort of sitting, let's say at maybe 7 o'clock at the class. The teacher's sitting at 12 o'clock at the class, and the door to come in is around 4 o'clock. So I can kind of look between the door and the teacher's desk. I look to the door and the principal comes in. I look to the teacher and they've got this worried look on their face. I look back to the principal and the principal's standing at the door having a conversation with the teacher. I look beside the teacher and I swear I can see smoke coming up from one of the drawers. Principal talks, talks, talks. Teacher talks, 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 talks. Principal does a scan of the room. Principal leaves. Teacher does this in the desk. So I'm sitting sort of over here. The door to the room is over here. So I'm looking at the teacher and I see the teacher do this, just put their hand, they open the drawer and they do something in the drawer, which causes another sort of like just a last gasp of a smoke thing. And they close the drawer and classroom starts. So in my mind, I'm thinking, as this memory flows back, and I've played it back a few times, I'm sure I've adjusted it for different kind of entertainment value. But ultimately, like, I think that I think that the teacher was probably smoking in class, having a cigarette between classes. Another memory of getting some school tour, even when I was when I where was I? So I'm a teacher. So as I'm in teacher trainer getting a tour of a school, and someone says, "Yeah, that was the staff room." No, sorry, that was the teacher's lounge, not the staff room. That was the teacher's lounge. And you walk into this teacher's lounge, and just like you were describing the stains from the artwork, like you can see where on the wall there was pieces of art or pictures hung there previously. They're not there anymore. But what is there is that sort of like murky gray outline shadow around a fairly clean wall space, and you know that's from people being in there smoking and just blowing up there. Like, and then right away where I go is I do this. I look up at the ceiling because that's where I know. I can remember in our house we had the popcorn ceiling, and I'd look up, and you could see all the sort of the yellowy gray spots on the ceiling. Smoking in schools, eh? Don't smoke in school, kids.
When I remember in elementary school, I'd go to the staff room for something, knock on the door would open and be smoke everywhere. Teachers sitting on the couch just puffing away. I laugh because I became a teacher and now you don't, people are ostracized. Like I've seen employees in their cars off school property smoking because they don't
Hmm.
want to just stand on the corner of the street. So they get in their car, they drive off the property onto the side street where you can still see them, but they're not on school property and they're just puffing away. I think it's funny. I just remember like the teachers just sitting all prim and proper, coffee on one side and just smoke everywhere. Like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the videos that they would show us about what to do if there was a fire in the school and how the smoke would be up top, so you'd have to get down low. And even as a kid, I would think it'd be hilarious if I had to walk in the staff room and I had to like go on my hands and knees because to avoid all the smoke above me. Oh man, good times, eh? Funny times. Things have changed. Things
Do you,
have
do you,
totally
do
changed.
did you ever do you remember the moments of going to restaurants and
Oh,
you
I
know
remember clearly. Recently, I'm talking like, holy cow, 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. My brother-in-law and I were in Michigan for a football game, and we were staying in a hotel. We woke up, went for breakfast, and we walk into the restaurant, and they say to us, smoking or non-smoking,
serious, eh?
which, yeah, baffled us because we hadn't heard that phrase in a long time. And
Hmm.
we're like, non-smoking. But where they sat us,
Yeah,
they literally sat us at a table, and at the table to the left of us was smoking section. So
yeah,
these two people sitting at that table, they must have smoked a pack. They literally, from the minute they sat down to order, they had a cigarette in their mouth and they would just suck them back until there's nothing left, put them out, and before they put it out, they had another one in their mouth, lit up, and sucking them back. We ate our breakfast as fast as we could because there was no separation between the smoking and the non-smoking side. We were
mm,
effectively everybody in that restaurant was in the smoking side because
yeah.
that smoke goes everywhere. We were dying laughing. Like we were dying. We're like, these people are puffing these things like they're free, eating their bacon and eggs and talking about whatever. And we were like literally like in the corner, kind of huddled away so that we wouldn't be exposed as we were eating our breakfast to get out of there.
Yeah.
Incredible. Incredible.
It's a thing, and I don't like. I can remember going to the restaurants and just same thing. There was no real division, and again, not really like at the time. I wasn't thinking, oh, I hope this time, maybe this time we'll sit in the non-smoking. Like I never thought to myself that there would be a choice. I never thought to myself, I wish my mom and dad just wouldn't smoke this time.
Mhm.
Um, man, that's just and same thing. Like that I'm surprised that I would or wouldn't have lung issues. I tell people that I've smoked, and for some reason, one of the things they say, like, you don't look like a smoker. So I've said that to people when I share that story. They're like, really? You smoked? It makes me wonder what they're sort of like, how are they calibrating that, how are they calibrating that little bit of judgy? I'm okay. I guess on one hand, I kind of go, oh, thanks. Cool. I'm not, because sometimes I've been on that horse. I've been on that horse. I'm like, you know, I've hit my I can remember having a really hard conversation with my parents, telling them like once we had kids, and my mom was asking me about coming and visiting, and I asked her flat out. I said, "Have you still do you still smoke in the house?" Just hands down. And there was this huge pause on the other end of the phone. She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well." I don't know if you could like hold off smoking for about a week. We'll come. I said those words because in my mind I'm like, it's not just about me anymore. Like it's not just about. It's about what I perceive to be protecting my kids too, right? Like protecting my children.
When Sarah and I got married, we were living in this like little apartment, and my cousin from Lebanon was coming, and he's an educated professional. He happens to smoke, and I
Mm.
remember Sarah was staying at her parents' house the night before the wedding, and so my family was staying in our little apartment, which included my cousin. And I remember saying to him, listen, if you need to smoke, you need to either go outside or go out on the balcony. And there was a moment of like, there's that moment where, like, my mom's, I probably was embarrassed that I was telling him, our esteemed relative from the Middle East, where he could and couldn't smoke. Um, and then there's probably him with the disillusionment of, what? What are you talking about? And then there's me being like, you know what? This is this is like our place. It's not my place. I don't want to smell that stuff, and she doesn't want to come back to it.
Yeah,
And um, and that was interesting and awkward. But he did smoke outside on the balcony, which I appreciate. I found out after my brother told me that back in Ottawa, when before the wedding, they went to like a Middle Eastern dessert store, and my uncle, my not my uncle, sorry, my cousin walked in with my mom, and as my mom's looking at the pastry, she turns around and he's got a cigarette out and it's lit, and he's just smoking it in the
like
place.
in the actual joint.
Yeah, and my mom's like, you can't, it's like no smoking in here. He's like, it's all good. Like, and then the Middle Eastern people came out from the back to, you know, try to customer service, right? Like, what can I get you? And nobody told him to put it out.
Oh,
And
really?
he started speaking in Arabic to the guys and girls working there, and he's just puffing away. Like, even he knew, well, I'm going to a Lebanese dessert place. They're not gonna, nobody in there is gonna, everybody's in there is gonna be smoking anyway. Nobody was smoking. But it was just funny how he's like, this is a safe space, right? These are my people. They'll understand. Nobody told him to put it out, but my mom was like, what are you doing? Like in where we live, there's no smoking in public places. You can't just walk into a restaurant, light up a dart and be like, it's okay because everybody's part of my culture, or you assume that. So that it boggles my mind that that requests when people say, hey, don't smoke here, and they look at you funny. And it became a bigger thing when my friends whose parents smoked had kids, because all of a sudden they're like, you're not smoking with the baby
Yeah.
around.
Yep.
That's where I draw the line. You smoked with me, I had no place to say anything. Now I'm telling you, you're not smoking with the kids around, the babies or whatever. And then the other thing that always boggled my mind was non-smokers who would smoke with smokers just to do it. So like I remember my parents would have get-togethers and friends would come over, people that I knew that weren't smokers. And as they're sitting there chatting, having coffee or whatever, they're like, here, pass me a cigarette. And then, my dad would laugh and say, but you don't smoke. And they're like, well, I
That's
just want I just want one for now.
that's the whole social. I'm just a social smoker. It falls in that same category as I'm just a social drinker. I'm just a innocuous kind of um, safe version of a consumer.
But it
Um,
scares me because nicotine is so highly addictive
yeah.
that I can you really do it socially? Can you just pick and choose when you want to do it? Like in my mind, the answer is no. That's why I stay away from it, because next thing you know, you're in
Do
the
you
store.
think you would? Do you think you would step into it? Like you think is that something? Do you feel like you would just like get really good at it? Like you would you would become the full fledged smoker? Like is there any sort of
It
fear of
worries
that
me.
that you couldn't just try it to check it out? Not that you're
No, no,
curious
no.
about it, but
No, no, no. I know I'm not trying it. Like it's always for me that's been a non-negotiable.
right.
And hey, you know what? Sometimes I do drink alcoholic beverages. I don't have a problem though. Like I don't have a drinking problem.
Hmm.
You know, some could argue maybe I have an eating problem because it's very difficult for me to say no to, pastries and stuff like that. So I guess it's all relative, right? But smoking was always like, no way. I've never had a puff of a cigarette, and I have no interest in trying it. So it always, coming from that perspective, even as a young person, it always scared the heck out of me when I would see one of my parents' friends light one up. I'm like, do you know what you're doing? Like, your health is at stake, your kids' health is at stake, and for goodness sake, your hard-earned money. That was a that is a really expensive addiction.
Hmm.
Really expensive. And I used to go buy my dad his cigarettes
You knew the
every day.
price, so
I
you
knew
knew
the
the price
price.
point.
I knew the price point. I knew the big brands. I knew it. And then I remember one day, you're gonna love this. The owners of the corner store down the street where I used to always go get my dad his smokes, they were Middle Eastern. So there was a connection there for my father and for them. And I remember the first time, I remember when they weren't supposed to sell cigarettes to me anymore. And I remember my dad saying, they're not going to say no to you. I remember going to buy cigarettes. Maybe I'm wrong with the date. Something happened where I just wasn't allowed to do it anymore. I don't know if it was official or not, but I went in there and I put my money down and I didn't even have to tell them what kind. And I remember the guy said to me, I can't sell them to you. And I looked at him like, you want my dad to come in here? Like, you want me to go home and tell my dad you're not going to sell me his He's like, go ahead. I can't. I'm not going to lose my store because your dad wants his cigarettes. I don't remember. I just remember him doing that.
It's
I don't remember.
interesting.
I don't remember if it was. I just remember. I guess he put his foot down because if you think about it, we had more kids in there buying cigarettes than adults because there are lots of Middle Eastern people around and they just send their kids to go get it. Yeah, man, that it brings back a lot of interesting memories for me. But
I find it when I think back, one of the things that I always wondered is why my mom wouldn't admit that she was a smoker. Like that's I always wondered. She was never entirely open to admitting that she was a smoker. She has always had a little bit of that. Um,
shame.
who knows? But all I know is that she has always found a way to make it seem like she's not really a part of that crew. And just to listen to her sort of like she struggles to try and find a way to articulate it often. And it was in you. I mean, you mentioning the your dad, like it being the one thing that he has, right? Like that luxury that he can afford, and and likely to a little bit of the social, like there's probably a social element to it as well, like being a part of being a part of something that's yours. I don't want to say a club, but I mean I think there's an element to that. I can remember my grandmother, one of the conversations around, because my grandmother, when she moved in with my parents, in her room she would smoke until it got to a point that she wasn't kind of remembering and her coordination was kind of faltering a little bit, so she wouldn't um so it became kind of dangerous. Like she might fall asleep in bed and be smoking. But
Mm.
in the doctor, in the discussions around whether or not she should or shouldn't stop, had basically said it would actually be the anxiety and stress of stopping smoking would be
Mhm.
worse than the projected damage that the cigarette's doing to her. And that was the first time, like these weird kind of like thoughts around smoking, and I guess it's around habits, that habits could have two sides to them. It's not as simple as saying it's all bad or all good. Because I really had to wrap my head around that. Like a doctor is actually accrediting and saying, it wouldn't be very good for her and her stress and her overall wellness if she stopped smoking. And it wasn't until she officially was on oxygen. that they said, okay, you're done. You're not lighting up anymore. There's no more smoking for you because you're permanently on oxygen. Um, I will tell you something just as a last connection to that. And this is just where it gets so, you and I started talking about when we're on the off ramp about kind of judging people's lives and not really knowing, but assuming to sort of position ourselves in their decision making. So when here's how I've kind of said in my head. When my dad died, he had cancer, but it wasn't the cancer that killed him. So he was in treatment for the cancer. It wasn't specifically about that, and the cancer that he had actually wasn't related to his smoking. It was a different type, of multiple myeloma, different type of cancer altogether. So when he developed lung problems and had to go on oxygen. And what was interesting was that he still smoked. He still smoked. He just wouldn't do it when he was around his oxygen. So he was kind of riding that fence. And it was all sort of in observing all that made me realize, like, this is really that type of addiction is really complex. Like really, really complex. And he had said something similar things, that his enjoyment of doing it and the fact that he was sort of sick with something that was unrelated to it, he sort of said, I kind of need this. I need this thing. He said it, I need it in the way that I would say, I need chocolate ice cream. Because he had it just plain, like it was just a craving. He said, this is what I want. This is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Mind blowing. Habits, yo. Judgment.
Is
Dad memories. Dad memories.
Dad memories. I think that's probably going to be the title of this episode. Hey, thanks for putting up the last podcast on YouTube. I have not been able to deal with it and push it out to iTunes, so I apologize for that.
No, all good.
Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know.
I'm a bad host, man. Like I still haven't finished. I might even mention this in the last podcast. I still haven't finished 2 conversations that I had in the summer on squirrels. So I'm not getting to stuff. I'm not getting to stuff. I'm making a lot of lists and I'm doing a lot of stuff on my lists. But dude, I'm just not getting to everything. And then I get to the end of my day and I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm done. I need to sleep. I feel like just getting to sleep and have you started IEPs?
No.
And I'm like sitting looking at that list, and I'm just like, I gotta start doing the waves, like kind of do a page from each, like just kind of go through it page by page. So yeah, I'm just not getting through my lists, and I'm at the point where I can't honestly tell myself the how and the when of when I'm going to get to those lists. I know I will, but I don't know. Is it too early on Saturday to start thinking about how much work you have to get done for Monday?
No. Because you do a little chunk now, and then you move on, have some fun, maybe do a little chunk later. That's how I roll. Now that you said it, I mean, but you know what? I'm in a good position in terms of I know my curriculum this term.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 2 weeks now to get to know. I don't have that many IEPs at the moment. So it's like right now my IEP workload is manageable.
Good.
And I have an idea of the modifications that will be made and the accommodations made. So it's like for me, half the battle is that normally, and I've got that under control up in my brain. So I'm okay. And I'll probably get it done this week or next weekend. But I hear you. As soon as you said it, I thought to my last year. Last year I had several of them, and they were very heavy, complicated type IEPs, and it drove me nuts, I think, for like weeks last year trying to figure out how to make it work, how to word things, in a way that would keep them authentic, but honor the child as well. Like I was dying. I'm not feeling that pressure right now with my
Good.
IEPs. But hey, it's revolving door in education. Like my thing is that the more experience I get with them, the better I can serve students that might remind me of other kids along the way. And
Yeah.
that's always a thing. And then, you know, when I hit on to a child who I've never dealt with their exceptionality or the way that they present themselves with respect to their needs and their strengths, then I do my best to rely on the fact that, hey, I've done this for many years. I can figure this out. There are people to help me. And that kind of brings me down a little bit in terms of anxiety level and stuff. But
I love how it always starts. And I don't know if this is just for me. I always start from the point of view, though, I'm never going to get this done. And then I do. And then I do. I honestly had that moment. Like, there's no way. There's no way I'm going to get this done. And I don't know why I put that in my brain, but yeah, there's no way. And I won't say somehow it gets done because there's nothing magical about it. You've said it before, it's the grind. It's the grind. You finally figure it out. You figure out the thing, or you're finally activated by the thing that reminds you that there's a real deadline here. This is a real task. It doesn't matter. Like whether it's late nights or my colleague who chips away at it, basically starting in August, like kind of get some of the frames kind of done and the ideas and some of the IEP goals, like because we know some of our students coming in. But there's something that kind of activates you, and I'm waiting for that. I don't know what that is, but I'm waiting for something in my operating system to say, Clough, it's go time. No more screwing around. Get it done.
go time.
Go time, yeah.
Well, speaking of go time, do you want to show us your pictures so then we can go and spend time with other things in our lives?
Ah, zing. That was good. That was good.
Oh, Jesus, the cigarette. What does it say? Memories. Cool.
So we'll
Brought
see how
to you
that.
by the cigarette companies today. Is
The
that our
memories of
sponsor?
cigarettes. Well, you know what? Yeah, but no, not really. But it's that there's a shared experience. Both of our dads are smokers, right? And the legacy of that, the conversations that flow out of that, and that it's not that simple. Like to sort of look at it as some people would make it out to be, like that dirty habit. It's hard. It's hard to accept that when you have, like, for me, like funny, I'm gonna say it, funny memories of watching my dad twice burn his nose, like um seeing him. So one last thing I'll share, like him coming to my university, like a house that I was renting with friends, and he walks in and he said, can I smoke in here? I'm like, no, but you can go out on, like, there was a balcony just off of my bedroom. And as he walked out the balcony, he smashed his head because it was sort of like the balcony. It was a very old style house, so you actually had to step up 2 steps to kind of go out, kind of like a shortened door. So it wasn't like you had to scrunch down a little bit to get outside. And as he walks out, he's sort of like he's trying to do the thing. He's trying to do the light. He's trying to get it lit. Trying to get it lit as he walks out the door, and he's not paying attention. He hits his head on the door and he stops for a second. And I'll never forget this. He stops. I think he stunned himself, got himself right on, like, the soft spot. Turns around, puts the cigarette away, puts the lighter away. I'm like, what? You're not going to go for a smoke? He goes, no, it's too dangerous. Not the smoking, but too dangerous to go out on that little deck thing outside my room. So there's actually some kind of funny moments around that, and also deeply emotional moments, like watching my dad cry, like, and realizing that this wasn't just something that people did. This is something that people struggled with. I didn't realize that there was a. I didn't realize that there was a. See my dad cry about smoking made me think about the pathology, and I had never thought about the pathology of smoking. It was always just because it was around everywhere, smoking sections, right? In the movie theaters, everywhere on the street, classrooms. It's like everywhere.
Let's try to spend more time wondering rather than judging, eh?
Yeah.
Because it is complicated and it's complicated.
And I find now when I sort of think back and I'm thinking about my dad, I'm trying to sort of really not zoom in on the picture too close. I feel like I'm trying to gather bigger memories, try to go back and try and remember other things because I find it's almost like I want to get into the rooms of the memories so that I can look around and not just get right to that small moment of a thing because then it's harder to see what's going on around you. So I find to kind of look back on these things, as you say, without judgment, I feel better about the memories when I don't do that. Like you just come away from it just kind of like,
It's like taking a different perspective of the
yeah.
same memory over and over again. I really appreciate you saying that because as soon as you said it, it made me think of a couple of moments that when I zero in on a particular person or object, it's, you know what? It leads to judgment for me. But so when what you're saying, allowing me to see the room and to have a more perspective of what's going on leads to a wonder. And to me,
Hmm.
that hurts me less, right?
I,
Because
and I like
some of the judgments hurt.
and not only that, for me, it's there's also pain associated with it because my dad's not here. Because he died. So I'm not trying to by polarizing the memories so quickly. I'm starting to understand, and this is maybe an element of adulting, is that I'm not only limiting that there's two things that happen. I limit my understanding of the person that I'm trying to cherish and think about, but I also realize that I'm limiting my skill level of trying to recall and remain in memories because you build a groove, right? Like you build a groove, a pathway to that memory. And sometimes along that pathway, it's a singular it's a singular trip with the same landscape every time. I gave a puzzle to my grade 9 learning strats and I watched them work it. I like to give a lot of puzzles in relation to puzzles, brain teasers, in to watch how the students work it out. Like what skills do they use? And then I bring it back to them, my observations. And then we talk about how certain methods, certain ways of thinking can kind of lock you down and you don't always come up with the answer that you want or you kind of get stressed out. So I use that tool a lot. And I watched them working out this puzzle. And in our debrief afterwards, we talked about how that idea that you get in your head right away about what the answer could be strips you of the enjoyment of the process or strips you of the wonder of the process. So how do you just stay a little bit more neutral and objective? And I think that's when I go back and I'm trying to find new pathways to go back and remember my dad. And I'm getting better at it. And sometimes I have to ask my mom questions, and sometimes I have to look at other things too. But yeah, it's all good because you make it so, right? I don't make that like it just happens. It's because I'm working to sort of make those memories different. I want to see
Hmm.
different sides of it. The one thing I haven't done, and I know I need to do, it's coming up soon, is ask. I haven't asked my mom a lot of questions about my dad and my memories, because it's almost like you need that secondary source. So to ask to see if you're remembering right. It's one thing to kind of stay in your own head and organize those shelves, but at some point you sort of like, am I even remembering this right? Did this actually happen the way that I'm looking at it now? So stay tuned for that.
Um, I've got safe hands, so
Yeah,
whenever you
same.
want to punch out, I'm good.
Okay, dude.
Have a great week.
Yeah, wish me luck.
Good
Um,
luck.
getting the cat will be in the house by
Oh,
next
the
week. So
cat. I
cat,
can't wait to hear about the cat.
there'll be a few posts this week, I'm sure. So
Instagram post with no descriptions, just a cat.
yeah, I'll see if I can get him to put his paw up in the air.
Oh, I'd
He's
love
got
to see that.
yeah, he's got a very peculiar paw pattern. So
Do you have a name for the cat?
uh the working name I threw down Steve. I like I liked Steve. I'm big on like if I had my choice, I like how a human name disarms people and you sort of like speak about someone and you're like, yeah, me, my wife, my kids,
Oh man, I can
Steve,
see now. Steve, you walk into work, you're like, I had such a bad morning. Got to my
Steve.
shoes. Steve had urinated in my shoes. And people are like, what's going on at Clough's place?
Who's
You know,
who's Steve?
I
Yeah,
took him and I tossed him out the door.
yeah, yeah,
What?
yeah. Locked him in the basement. So
Right
yeah,
on.
stay tuned, dude.
Okay.
All right, chat you
Have,
soon.
have a good one.
Do I haven't hit? Yeah, I'm gonna hit safe hands.